Hi, I'm Gianluca Fiorelli and welcome back to the third session. Today we are going to have as a guest the founder of Searchpedia. Uh, what it could be, probably, seems to be, let's see how it works, a sort of Wikipedia of everything related to SEO. But obviously this is not the only occupation this person has. She also the SEO for Octopus Energy, a company that really scaled a lot in the electric energy, green energy field in base, I think also in Spain the past 2 years, maybe before. She's an international search consultant. She also a judge in the European Search Award, Global Search Award, and so on. She recently spent a few days in Portugal for pricing and welcoming the winner of the European Search Award. She's young. Well, obviously, substantially everybody is younger but me. But she is one of these new smart new SEO leaders in our industry. Surely want to follow. This person is Laura Iancu. Hey, Laura, how are you doing?
Hello. I love the fact that you said my name right. It just sounds
Well, Laura is Laura. For me, it's not
Laura.
Laura. And
Yeah.
Yanku, I mean, off the record, we were discussing about
Yeah.
heritage and all the things that can be discovered just trying to understand from where a surname is coming. And yes, Yanku is. When I don't know how to pronounce a name, a surname especially, okay, if I know that the person is English or American, I try to pronounce it in American English or Britain English. But in this case, the best is to pronounce it how it is written and eventually being corrected. But so I don't invent anything weird. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Really good. I was just telling you before we start recording, I had a bit of a birthday party last night, not for me. So yeah, bit of a daytime drinking and all that. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit heavy today, but other than that, I am ready to go. Hot in the UK, which isn't something that we used to very much. So yeah, I honestly I miss Porto at this point. You just mentioned I've been to Porto. Yes, I've been to Porto, and it was actually nicer than here, temperature wise, which is a bit strange because it's normally the other way around. So
Well, I think of it is because it's north of Portugal, it's close to the Atlantic, it's
yeah.
substantially on the Atlantic. And so the wind tend to be quite fresh. Surely from photo I've seen share, the people who try to have a bath in the ocean clearly understood why it is not a good idea to have a bath in the ocean, even if it's May, especially still too cold. And
I I actually did. I didn't post the picture, but I did.
okay, so coming to going directly to our conversation, and let's do it with the classic question: how SEO is treating you lately?
Well, I would say compared to when I started, which would have been around now 7 years ago, almost. Yeah. I think it's treating me better. We've built a very sort of environment for everyone to have a say and express an opinion without judgment. And I feel like it's been easier to communicate, even though sometimes I perhaps had my doubts, right, on what I'm communicating or perhaps not having the full conversation. I just felt easier and a bit reassured to ask the questions and reach out to people. So I feel like, yeah, it's been treating me way better than lately in this perspective. Whereas on the other side, with everything that's coming our way, right, from big corporations, big tech corporations releasing so many things at the same time, because obviously the age of AI and all that, I did feel a bit perhaps fatigued, if
Mm.
that's the word. Yeah. I'm excited, but also a bit fatigued. So yeah, I'm being really honest here.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I felt few times overwhelmed because of all this flood of new information and obviously many times it's very difficult to just stay behind and all the information. And when you think about it, finally you have rushed some news, some intelligence from all the things shared, because that, I don't know, a new model is coming out, a new interface is coming out. And then you have to, okay, so what is going to change? I think it's, and then there is still all the classic stuff. I mean, core updates didn't stop to run. The spam update are running even more. And so all the classic things that we knew and are used to are still there and are still very, very important. So we cannot just forget one thing because there is this new thing and we have to find, and finally, we have just 24 hours and some of them should be left for sleeping and at least another few ones for having a life outside the work. And personally, I'm of the kind that when I'm not working, I don't want to think about work. So it's in this sense, yes, it's true, but it can be overwhelming. Everything is happening, especially in the past 2 years. And you were saying that, especially in the beginning, you were saying you had this. I mean, this is probably I can relate it to, even if I'm okay. You have also the sorry to say this because it's something that I wouldn't like to say, but you also have the condition that you are a woman in SEO. So with even more problems that we know are a relic that still sometimes doesn't want to go away from the past. But I can relate from the fact that maybe in the beginning you were feeling somehow or not intimidated by the people. It was somehow also the same for me, more because I was not an SEO coming from the information technology field. I was someone, I mean, I did spend more than 10 years working on television and movie industry. So let's say more marketing and content side. And yes, it was intimidating, especially in my early year to confront myself with more technical SEO. And I think that maybe we are lucky because despite of all the exception, our communities, the SEO community, the search community in general, is maybe one of the most welcoming community. And I think that you lived it and you found the solution to this kind of problem you maybe had in the beginning, embracing the community and let's call doing a sort of a taxonomy, the SEO community like women in tech and so on. Do you feel that this sort of relic about how women are considered inside our industry is maybe slowly but definitely changing or not?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And from my own experience, I wouldn't necessarily say that I felt I suppose, sex difference when I started in it, because my previous job was as a web designer and developer. So I was already kind of in an environment that was male dominated. So I didn't necessarily feel, oh, I've moved to a new environment where, is a bit different. It didn't necessarily feel different. And I had good experiences. I've always worked with really friendly people. And I think almost educators, if you want to call them that way, intelligent people, educators. Yes, I have had the experience of, working with someone who wasn't necessarily a nice person, but I don't necessarily reported to it. I choose to look at the nice bit and what I've learned from it. I understand the need to sort of talk the talk and address the elephant in the room when it comes to this inequality, right? Between the sexes in a tech environment dominated, regardless if it's SEO or software development or whatever you want to call it. I personally didn't feel it that way. I was made more aware of it when I become part of these communities and read others' experiences and realized that I perhaps been a tad lucky. So yeah, I wouldn't know to reply to you to be 100% transparent and say now, yes, I feel the things are getting better because I don't feel that way. I feel that, yes, there's more talk around it, more awareness around it. I feel like when I go to a conference, I see, a equal parts, I guess. You've got male, female, different genders. There's a mix, right? So I feel like it's more visible. But I don't know how it's treated inside it because I don't have firsthand experience. So I can only give you a bit of a answer. So I don't want to do that. From others' experiences and from what I see in chats and the talks I've been to and all that, it does seem to be the case of it getting better. So hopefully that's the direction we're going towards.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. And you
Yeah.
were saying that you previously doing SEO, you were working as a web designer, right? So here comes my second question. This experience you have as a web designer, what is making you focus so much in the connection between SEO and user experience? I don't want to use the acronym because for me, it's, as an Italian living
I
in
don't want
Spain,
to meetings. Yeah.
yes, talk about sexo
Yeah.
is weird. But in fact, as I was saying to also to Celeste Gonzalez in a previous episode, I was saying for me, search experience optimization was just another alternative acronym for SEO.
Yeah.
So a definition of SEO, in fact, Matt Cutts was using SEO as search experience optimization. And my
Yes.
website, I love SEO. In the older logo was a tagline with search experience optimization, and nobody was already still talking about SEO in that sense. So, is this experience you had that made you see the importance of the connection between SEO and UX?
I suppose I wouldn't say it's the only thing. I say it goes even back to my background in humanities.
Hmm.
So I'm someone who loves people. I've always been a bit of a welcome people. I'm very much, if you know me, you instantly know what I'm talking about. It's very easy for me to sort of like get people around me, talk to them, and actually I listen. I listen a lot. I like to listen to people. And again, back probably from how my grandmother raised me, who was an amazing woman, and it's kind of ingrained this quality in me. And I don't see it as something that I need to try. It just comes naturally. And it translates in the digital experience. It really does, because I do care about how people interact with things. And I feel like, yes, you're absolutely right. Web design and I suppose web developing really was the first kind of intro to being able to influence that directly and having that satisfaction of it that, ooh, you know, it's working. It's making a difference kind of thing. It's saving people time. It makes people smile. It's a nice color that will make someone smile in a bad day or whatever. Or when the Flash little game started, and I remember back in the day, oh my days, it was so fun because people used to interact with them. I know now they see them a bit cringe and all that, but when it started, it was fun. Like people were buying it. It was something that was very very nice to interact with. But yeah, I would say that probably this experience really helped me shape a bit how I think about SEO. And I completely agree with what you said about SEO being search experience optimization, because that's what we do. Yes, it is about making things visible. So I understand, obviously, it starts from a different place, right? But in the end, that's the goal: is making it not just visible and searchable, right? We want to make it nice to interact with and to sort of get to those goals, right? Not just the goals that we track in Google Analytics, right? Clicks, bounce rates, and not just those and conversions, but to make someone's life, not life, sorry, a bit big word there, to make someone's experience a nice experience. That's literally it.
Yes, and well, in my definition, my own definition was also not just a nice experience, but a useful experience because it's our work always has been something that we are improving the visibility of a client website for the search intent that people are using when searching. Before we classic 2, 3 words keywords, and now more with conversational search, but there is always a pain point, which maybe is just curiosity, not necessarily a pain point in literal term. But our purpose obviously will always has been to, okay, make this experience of search experience people have and live being useful, so that obviously my client is useful, because if not, obviously, and let's say we pretend that we are useful, so we are trying to make these discoverable, indexable, visible, etc., etc., and then on the website try to make it these things that nudge people to click on our search results, to be satisfied by what we are experiencing as a content, content as a text, as a video, as a form, as an application, and so on and so on. So this was more about the usefulness of the experience of search. So it's not just making feel good. I mean, obviously, if it's useful, you are feeling good. But now that SEXO, so search experience optimization, is becoming receiving the correct attention that it should probably it always had deserved. What are the things that you usually, let's say you're working on your on the site, Octopus, let's say, or Octopus can be a good example because it's the kind of website where the usefulness purpose, the beneficial purpose, is the main purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
if I want to land on Octopus, maybe I want to see a good explication of how it works, because we know that electric companies sometimes are very, very mm, hard to understand
Yeah.
in the terminology, all the tariff, for instance, are built, and so on and so on and so on. So
Correct.
when you are looking as an SEO who knows well how much important is also the user experience for having obviously also those kind of user engagement signal that we know are so important for SEO too. What are the first things that you open a page and say, okay, let's see this, and this one can be considered after.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I love that you refer to Octopus Energy because I work with this client on 3 different continents and 7 different markets. So different cultures at the end of the day. So I will give you a response that you probably don't necessarily expect, which is start with a bit of market research before and see how users interact with it before you start thinking, oh, what could go wrong or what is amazing. And because it's so different, right? If I compare to how a user interacts here in the UK and the pain points and the urgency that they have, for example, with an energy web page, right? If they want to change, for example, so switch a tariff or just research phase and all that, that there are so many steps and so many avenues that they can take in that sense before you actually think, oh, what is good and what is bad. But for the purpose of this, I'll keep it simple just because obviously we won't have time to go through millions of cultures and markets and how they interact with it. And let's just say that the main goals would be first one to, let's say, build awareness around tariff naming, right? Because that could be quite confusing for people because you've got so many tariffs. Obviously, you've got the fixed and you've got the variable tariffs, which are normally I suppose, the regular ones that people will know about. But then you have so many brand names and so many taxonomies, and like it's getting really, really overwhelming, I think, for people. And I think the first thing that I will advise to someone that is thinking, oh, I'm gonna design something like this, is to understand how users understand the naming conventions. Look at the taxonomy, see where they pop on the page and see how relevant they are and if it's confusing or not. And funnily enough, this is something that was one of my first projects I worked with Octopus because it was, yeah, the namings were so similar that it was so difficult for people to understand and separate what they were looking for. And then obviously if you land on the website and you can't find what you're looking for, or you become confused, then that experience that we're on about, so forget about usability or functionality, that experience becomes frustrating. And you might just bounce and go look for a competitor. So that's a lead that you pretty much losing there. So yeah, it's the answer to keep it short and sort of sum it up is depends on the market that you're looking at. It really depends on that. Second of all is first thing I'm thinking about when I'm looking at these things is how do I avoid frustration? Yeah. So that can come from like page speed insights and, and all that to actual product naming and segments on your website that are very hard to discover. And the third one would be to kind of look at it as an overall and think about how do I prevent a user, right, from bounce, from just pogo sticking from I got them on and then back on Google. So I guess, yeah, it's more about, so less about best practices, I think. It's more about common sense. That's the first thing that it's instinct. It's a lot of gut instinct and it's a lot of how do I interact with it and knowing about the user before actually starting looking at the page.
It's interesting that you talk about the naming, which is essentially, we could dig a lot into the topic because naming is substantially branding many times, and branding is substantially being able to create a knowledge graph for your brand so that, in this case, Google, but also the other agent like ChatGPT, OpenAI, Anthropic, etc., are able to associate your branding name. Because usually when people talks about brand, I think they forget that a brand is not just the name of a company. It's also all the name of a product. I mean, a brand name for Nike is also a Jordan, the sneakers. And so how to make that so when someone is searching for Jordan, Google understand that you are the owner of a term, Jordan related to sneakers, because they are produced by me, and I am Nike. So I think this is sometimes a little people mind, but people forget about it. This is why maybe personally I insist a lot about talking about knowledge graph for the brands. But I want to know because when now it's coming out my age, quite a few years ago, there was a good definition for using naming for SEO. For instance, when I was collaborating as a global associate for malls, which was SEO malls, we were experimenting a lot with naming of, let's say, a generic name was whiteboard, my old classic Rand Fishkin whiteboard Friday. So the naming was coming along so that people will start associating the naming to a thing below the naming, behind the naming. And so start doing that kind of brand searches that you want Google to understand, record, and so making the other way around from searching the naming, the brand naming. So we were calling it prop word, which was proprietary words. So for searching the naming, for instance, in case of Octopus, could be a specific tariff name. So that okay, if you are searching this, when probably you are searching for energy tariff. So if you are searching for energy tariff, we are going to present you the page with the tariff name. So are you working also in this sense?
Yes, of course. So if we're talking specifically technical, yes, of course. I feel like entity building and entity reporting at this point and product namings, right, in general, they should be part of your report hygiene. You need to know where they're served, the pages, the main page, the pillar pages, if you like, that are the most relevant. Even the ones that people are currently serving on forum-based platforms like Reddit, for example, which is something that I've started working a while back actually, just to see if people they connect it right in that sense. So I'm not just relying on schemas and building knowledge graphs. I'm also relying on the additional content that I'm setting out there and how I connect it back to the mothership, if you'd like. And obviously, we're very clear in our communications, in our press releases. If something's happening in that sense, we're trying to make it as simple as possible for the user before we're thinking, oh, search engines might be might be confused, because it's been quite not necessarily straightforward, but I think it's easier to implement these things for search engines than it is for users. So I feel like the priority is to make the user understand better than the search engine what they're looking at. Because as I said, they'll be going on Reddit, they'll be speaking to their friends, they'll be communicating their WhatsApp groups about it and so on. It's such a strong and huge community around these things that, yeah, that's my main priority. So I'm literally like I've discovered this new tool. I don't know if you do shout outs for tools on your channel, so I'm not going to mention it just in case. But I've got a tool that I've been using for, I think, half a year now, where I'm actually like analyzing everything that's going daily on Reddit on these namings and see
Oh,
how
you can
people.
cite it. I mean, it's
Sorry,
not a problem. Even if it's not a problem, you can cite it. I mean, even if once web ranking is our home for this video podcast, I mean, we have no problem. You can cite it. What
okay,
tool
yeah,
is it? I mean, curious.
it's Brand Radar. Yeah, it's
Oh, yes.
yeah. So yeah, I've been using it for this purpose quite a lot, and I feel like we don't. I feel like if perhaps a year ago there was still a bit of confusion around namings, the terms. I feel like it's been way better. I don't necessarily see that negative sentiment that's associated with it. Obviously, it's a forum based, so it's always going to be negative sentiments around certain topics. But yeah, when it comes to like the confusion that used to be present, that's diminished. That's completely diminished. And yes, of course, I'm not gonna, say which one, technical or community based, which one's more
Well,
important. But
I
I,
think that they are clearly connected. They
yeah,
are. I mean, for instance, when I say that we must communicate to the boss with a better organizational schema, i- obviously it's also because this kind of information is should surface to the public, for instance,
hmm,
and this is important. I mean, maybe in some cases is also legal obligation. At least in Europe, you have to put in the footer all the, classic company registration number, all these kind of things that are less important for the user. But what I've seen now, for instance, there are certain types of content that usually we did not ever pay attention to, like the terms, the legal,
yeah,
that especially the LLMs, they are using them a lot because they are food for information for them for very specific. Especially, for instance, in e-commerce, the well written, you know, shipping and return policy, which is not something that okay, we say as an SEO before we were probably telling them to our clients and to our companies, okay, we need this page because Merchant Center pretended,
yes,
but really didn't care what is written.
no,
Apart eventually for in the product page, yes, you have to put this kind of information because rich results. But now we must pay attention also as an SEO to what is actually written in those pages because they pop up like a zombie into
hmm.
the LLM answer.
It's funny.
And if what you have written doesn't correspond to what you are doing or what you are also saying in other pages, like the product pages,
Yeah,
I've seen this kind of antithetic information offered by a website, then you are going to have a problem.
that's
Because
true.
then the client is going to tell you you are the responsible of what is said by the LLM.
Hmm.
Apart of that, our responsibility is also because the company is giving a wrong information and incorrect information. So we must take care also of these kind of things.
Absolutely. And I love that you gave this example, because it isn't something that people necessarily think about. As you said, it used to be something done once and updated by, I don't even know, maybe updated once in a while to kind of look over the claims and see they're still legally sound. So yeah, that was kind of funny, but you're absolutely right. I feel like nowadays, because it's so easy to resume something or find little pieces of information, in like docs, like millions of pages of terms and conditions and privacy policies and all that, people feel more empowered, I think, to just like use it with LLMs. I feel like they give the regular folk this sort of like invisible power to start speaking legalese and kind of understand their rights a bit better and quote it, as you said, for things like return policies or exchanges or consumer law type things that I feel like you're absolutely right. And I've been very, very careful, to be fair, with having claims explained properly. And we've always had a team. I've always worked with a team, right, behind it. So it was never like an SEO job. To be fair, most of the times don't even like bother to like index these pages. It's just, they're just there kind of thing. So it's not, you're not thinking about it in an SEO, from an SEO perspective. I don't necessarily think about it that way. But you're absolutely right. Since we started, mainstreaming LLM use like ChatGPT, Claude, and so on, right? They've become a bit more powerful. And I'm gonna go back to Reddit just because, if funnily enough, when I've extracted a list of URLs that are most common cited in Reddit for Octopus in specifically, the terms and conditions were up there. So I was like,
Yeah.
ah, interesting. Okay, maybe it's time to revisit, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, because obviously these are the pages people that want to complain or even
yeah,
sue a company are the first one they are going to
mhm.
search or asking information about. And talking about, you were talking about Reddit, but you were also talking about press release, so appearing in a third party website. And obviously, how much, okay, you have doing SEO from, say, 7 years, but how much did you see the importance of, as an SEO, to think in omnichannel than just the classic website and search has increased during the year?
I am part of the generation that we were very heavily influenced and present on social media, I think, and YouTube, like specifically YouTube. I think YouTube was quite a big thing for us. It still is, but back in the day, it was wow, you know. And I'll tell you something which I think I don't know if you heard before, but even 7, 8 years ago, probably even way back, we started, my generation specifically, we started using YouTube as a bit of a search engine. We had that kind of experience of, oh, wait a second, Google isn't, Bing isn't, Yandex and so on, DuckDuckGo. So it was, yeah, I've always thought about it in that perspective. I want to be here, but I also want to be here. So I'd say that's it's in simple terms. That was the first insight of, actually, wait a second. I'm not thinking, oh, I want to make my blog or whatever visible on Google only. I want it to be reinforced. I want third party. I want people to find me everywhere. You know. So I'd say I've always thought about it in this perspective. I don't think I've ever seen it as a singular channel. I'd never had that. I think perhaps maybe generations before me, yeah, probably because I honestly don't know how to respond to this, but I've never seen it as a singular thing.
Maybe from not you as a person, but as an SEO who is asked to do things. For instance, have you seen in 7 years more your clients in general asking to focus more also in channel who are not the classic search channel?
Yeah.
And now for me, the classic channel, sorry, are not just Google and Bing or Yandex or Baidu or Naver, but also classic search is becoming the LLMs, the chatbots. So I was thinking of, have you seen these clients asking you and not eventually or talking only to very vertical marketer or social media marketer to pay attention and to contribute to the success of the company visibility in not only YouTube, but it can be TikTok, can be Instagram is a little more complicated, but then obviously Reddit specific forum, not just Reddit, even if everybody's concentrating on Reddit because of the volume of Reddit, etc., etc., etc.
Yes, absolutely. I think the proof is in the pudding. Everyone's talking about it and has been for a while now. And I feel like, if we separate the classic channels, right? And then obviously social media and all that, which has been present for quite a while. And I think most brands, they know where they want to be present already. So they know, oh, we've got a community of 10,000 followers on TikTok, so we want to be present there, right? And so on. So apart from that side, which has been happening for a while, you're absolutely right to point out that the whole LLM phase and craze has sort of penetrated in that sense. I think it also made SEO individuals and professionals, and regardless if you work with clients or in a company, a bit more visible in that sense. And because now they're thinking, oh, we use ChatGPT every day or Claude because it's mainstream now. So we want to be seen there. We want to be seen correctly there. And I think that's where it starts getting a bit messy because you can't necessarily control the entire amount of information that goes in these platforms. With social media and community management and all that, it's easy to manage, right? If you've got the right team and the right practice behind it, you can easily make it happen and portray the right brand guides and values and everything else. Whereas with these platforms, I think it's challenging to say the least. Because yeah, it's very volatile. It's not entity building like we know it. It's not brand guidelines like we know it. It's not. It's at least at the moment. I don't know how we're gonna get there specifically and how fast we're gonna get there to be able to control these platforms in that sense. But I'm also asking myself, perhaps we don't need to. I don't know. That's the humanity. The
No,
humanity.
I think that for the moment, in this moment of our professional life, the most important thing is making LLMs talking about us as a brand with the correct information.
That's it. Yeah.
This is probably the urgent priority because, I mean, not only because they substantially use everything published since the start of the webs for the training data, so they can surface as it was yesterday news something written in 20 years ago.
Yes.
So, or in this case, I think that we should first treat LLM as a huge renovated online reputation management task.
Hmm.
And then when that thing is fine, and it's always going, it's never hand that kind of job, then really seriously starting to make to be visible for the kind of answer we want to be visible. So that's why I don't want to talk about entering in the polemic of prompt tracking because I am very skeptic, if not for very specific kind of things about prompt tracking, but to rediscover something called marketing. So a deep audience analysis first. So starting from there, going, are we really talking to our audience, to our buyer persona? And from there, are our competitors talking to the same buyer persona better than us? And so starting from there, reviewing the content. And so this is also making our content speak a better language for this kind of buyer persona. So this is going to be eventually mimicked by the LLM when we are answering to those kind of buyer persona, because we are not faking a language that we are not using, but using the language that we are using. So this is maybe and for me, it's the correct way to work. But first, online reputation go first. And talking about online reputation, the concept of EAT is substantially related also to online reputation. And this time we won't cite vendors, but we recently saw a vendor selling something like an agent able to scout the web, finding opportunity, contacting the website, asking for inclusion, negotiating the payment for the inclusion, and sending an optimized chunk for being mentioned on the website. So, where is the limit? Because we know that our brand is mentioned on the site is valued a lot. Once it was just links, so it was a little bit difficult to. I mean, we could buy link. We all did that. Who is not, who is denying it is maybe not telling the truth. But we know that now it's easier because a mention is just a mention. It's not that hard to ask for a mention. And it's hard to talk about ethics in our work. But how much we should be ethical in the sense, okay, you talk about before about search experience optimization. How can you justify a search experience optimization giving false information just because you bought it?
That's a very tough question, and you're right. I think that's where the limit is. I think if you have to lie to grab attention or sell something, that's something that for me is, yeah, again, my humanity side. That's something that I will plainly say no to. And this is something that I recently spoke with a few people in our industry that are making really good bucks, right? They've been able to like keep work ethically and make quite a bit of money. Whereas someone like myself who's been a bit, I call myself a search activist in the sense that if I don't believe in your product, if I don't believe in something and I feel like you're selling something that's not necessarily aligned to what I believe, right? Not the whole world, just speaking from my perspective, I believe to be a bit iffy, dodgy, I'm gonna say no. And we were joking about it because like, oh, you're never gonna get rich. And I was like, do you know what? I'm comfortable as long as I feel like I'm caring for the topic that I work for, and I don't create it into something that I love now, but I'm gonna end up despising later. I'm fine with not being rich. So that's the most diplomatic answer that I can give you in this perspective. It's not something that I condone. I'm not going to judge other people for doing so because that's part of the person I am. If that's something that you can do and completely detach yourself from it and go live your own happy life and feel like, cool, fine, good for you. I know myself. I wouldn't be able to go to sleep at night. So yeah. And I love the industry that I work in. It's one of the only industries that have tickled my brain in the right way for all these years. I never got bored. I'm neurodivergent, so that for me was kind of like ticking all the boxes, and I wouldn't want to risk, you know, soiling it in my eyes by doing something I don't necessarily relate to or vibe with. If you want to, you know, use more Gen Z language, but
Okay.
yeah.
No problem, no problem. And talking about your past studies in humanities, maybe the answer can lie in there. What so many people didn't understand about what a chunk is.
Oh my
Because,
God. They took it literally.
yeah,
Yeah, they took it literally. That's what happened. Oh, chunk. We're gonna chunk. No, I think that's what they understood from the whole thing. And it's just they're gonna remain obsessed around it until something new comes up, I feel, and then perhaps interpret or misinterpret the same terms and propagate it in the sense that it's just losing its meaning. And it's okay, not all of us have to understand these things. And I feel like that's where people should be a bit more permissive about themselves, right? You don't have to understand the mathematics around it. You don't have to be a software engineer, a computer engineer to do this job. Just do what you know and what you know you can do professionally and efficiently. You don't have to like sound like 10 people you follow on LinkedIn, just to sound smart, because at the end of the day, that's not going to help you, and it's not going to help your product or the client that you work with if you're trying to impress or sort of implement something you don't understand to begin with. So it's just as simple as that. We're not different brains, and it's amazing. There's such a multitude of like brains out there. We don't need to be copy paste. And it doesn't mean that if you don't understand something, or you know you're less than, no, you've got your own thing. Go do that thing. We don't have to sound mathematical. I've seen people with the same when the cuisine similarities started popping up in, like, everyone was like, well, like they were trying to use the terms in a way that, and it's so simple if you break it down, if you literally just look at the word, what it means, and then you put it in context, you can understand easily what it can mean in search context. But people just thought, oh, someone said that, so it must be true. So I'm gonna go and run with this idea until it loses all its meaning. So yeah.
Yes, for instance, in the case of chunking, people didn't understood that that doesn't mean that you have to start writing like as if you were, I don't know, Hemingway or Bret Easton Ellis, who were writing their novel with a very short 1-2 line paragraph, and just
Yes.
that it is not that, or even worse, creating articles that are substantially a sequence of pointed lists, which is the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah. I
Uh,
remember that.
but it is just about clarity, how you structure the content in a way that is clear, understandable for the human reader,
Yes.
the person who has to experience your content, and clear enough, unambiguous for, in this case, an LLM to understand that that phrase is referring to this thing and just this thing.
That's
And
true.
then you have to create the connective. People were just thinking about the second thing, so the clarity for the bot, but forgetting something which is the connecting phrase, connecting the blocks together.
Mm-hmm.
In short, forgot totally the concept of narrative.
Yes. Oh, I love that you said that. The concept of narrative, the flow. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And for cosine similarity, I mean, you have to understand, okay, this is a mathematical representation because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I mean, I care about why, how can I use it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and how can I use it to understand if my content is aligned to what other people are saying about the same topic and what eventually already the AI answer are saying about
Yes.
a topic, and to see if I'm too close. So maybe in this case, if I'm too close, I'm commodity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to be used. I'm not going
Yes.
to be cited. And I'm not going even to appear in a classic search result. Or even if I'm too distant, so I'm going not to be cited because I'm too contrarian. So in order to find the balance, and I use it for that. I'm not using for, okay, if this phrase is not you. I don't want to use curse word, but it's, I think you understood which kind of think of thought
Yes.
are this kind of thoughts. So, but
Yeah.
yes. Okay, yo, almost 1 hour. So let's
Wow.
stop talking about search. I want to talk about you. As
Oh.
a, yes, I want to know something about you. I mean, it's something that we already talked before starting this episode when we off the record and I asked you about your surname. And you told me that you are a, let's say, wonderful mix of Romanian, Bulgarian, and Hungarian, if I'm
A
correct.
bit, but yeah.
Oh, I mean, you're a Balkan melting pop, probably.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's do this game. If you have to, let's say, look at your chromosome, and I'm this, part of this, part of this, part of this. Of all these heritage, what do you think are the things that makes you connect to this heritage? If you think at this heritage.
Ooh. I suppose the people. So yeah, I, in myself, I feel that I am Romanian, right? I feel because I was born, I've got the citizenship of Romania, and I mainly grew up around Romanian language and culture. For me, that's my core, right? The people I love the most and the formative years of my life were surrounded by many cultures, though. So I would have Hungarians, right, in my side of the family. I'd have the Bulgarian heritage. I even had Moldavian, right? So I feel like it's hard to like pinpoint me as a person, like in that sense. I feel like I'm the sum of everything.
For instance, what could be an Hungarian trait of Laura Iancu?
Ooh, okay. So I think that my Hungarian trait is, and it's probably not right, but that's how I see it, is my passion for metal music, for example.
Oh,
Right? Yeah, because I was born in 1989, where Romania was still a communist country and sort of cut out from the West. And my family was lucky enough, because of the Hungarian part of the family, to receive like different videotapes or different posters and magazines and stuff like that from Hungary, right? So I grew up, with the likes of Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, all that, Iron Maiden. By the way, this was not intentional. Like, I literally, this is my lounge t-shirt. So yeah, I feel like that's, yeah, to me, that's what I associate with Hungary. Also, the some types of foods that I like to eat from there, and yeah, it's just, yeah, a mix. And I feel like all of us, especially in the age of globalization, with us like traveling more and all that, we adapt certain traits from the cultures that we interact with. I lived in China, for example, for a year and a
I
half.
didn't know.
Yeah, I taught at university there. I worked with adults. I had to adapt courses for software engineers, for network engineers, like talk it and teach these classes in English, even though I'm not a software engineer, am I? So it was the fact that I've been there in that kind of in that kind of interactive environment with these cultures that for me felt like home. I've got things from them as well. I've got the whole like I suppose thinking about strategically sometimes what I'm going to say, like quieting my brain a bit. This is something that I've managed to get from the Chinese culture, for example. Something that for my neurospicy brain was no. Like blah blah, I was that kind of person, and I still am at the core. But they taught me so much patience and respect, and yeah,
Mhm.
same here in England, right? The banter, the humor, the things that, yeah, it's just a mix of things. But thanks for asking this question. I don't think anyone ever asked me this question.
No, well, I have this kind of curiosities about people because I think that everything in our past, even the past of our past, in a sense, the life of our parents, substantially are making us who we are. So this is for me the best way to understand, also because I'm an history buff, the best way to know how really he's a person. And I'm grateful you share this information with us here at the third session, and also all the discussion and conversation we had until now. Laura, surely we are going to meet up in real life sooner or later in one of
Yeah.
the many conferences that are popping up in Europe. Until then, I wish you a wonderful, wonderful, and maybe not so hot summer.
Thank you very much. Likewise, Gianluca.
Okay. And about you, dear friends, remember subscribe to the channel and remember to give it a like to this episode because it surely deserves a like. Thank you and see you the next time. Bye bye.